This is going to be basically a totally over-engineered toy, but it's for someone really special to me, so I figured I'd take some extra time. I have the lathe. Well, I'm going to bring you over to the bench now. We're going to take a look at a prototype that I made, and the prototype I basically threw together in about 5 minutes, so it's not very pretty, but let's go over and take a look at it, and you'll understand as I go through the process of building this one exactly what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So let's go take a look. What we're making for the young man is just a little toy for him to play with, and it's going to be something his granddad made, so hopefully he'll be cherishing that thing for many years to come. We're basically going to make him a little spin top. It actually works pretty good. So we're going to go back over to the lathe, and we're going to go ahead and trepan out that face right there. And what I'm going to be using for that is this high-speed steel bit. This little shaft here to do the twisting on the one that we're working on. I'm going to make that out of this chunk of aluminum. I have this left over in the scrap pile. It had a 1/2-20 thread on it. So that's why we went ahead and threaded that brass disc 1/20, and then I'm going to actually make the actual tip of it out of this chunk of brass. Let's go back over to the lathe and we'll start to trepan in this face right here. And as luck will have it, it was perfectly on center height. So let me do a little subtraction and we'll figure out how far we're going to go in. $225 thousandths. But I'll go ahead and knock off that sharp edge so the grandson doesn't cut himself, and we'll move on to the other side. Now, while I have it centered in the chuck here, let's see what our bar runs like. This thing is about, I don't know, 6-7 inches long right now. Well, that's not horrible. Well, I'm not really sure exactly how long I want this thing for my grandson. I know for me this is fine, but you know, he's only 5, so let me just stick it in, face it off, and turn it down to some diameter for right now. I'll figure that out later. Gonna have to be really gentle on this thing. Well, let's see what kind of finish we can get using carbide here. Well, I didn't exactly have anything particular planned for this transition in between the brass and this little stem right here. So I basically just came up with that. It's pretty simple. It's just a 45-degree chamfer. I think that looks pretty nice. So before we take this out of this setup right here, we're going to go ahead and knurl this guy. I don't have a whole lot of experience at knurling, so we're just winging it. engage the feed. Now I'm going to back her out. And we'll see what we've got. Yeah, I think that's what we were looking for. Let me try and bring you in a little bit close and let you take a look at it. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and plunge the carbide bit in about 10 or 15 thousandths, just enough to break that transition line, and then I'm going to run the tool all the way down to the end. So let me put my chuck back together and we'll think about working on that side right there. When I had turned this side, I wasn't exactly ecstatic about this surface finish here, so I'm going to use a tried and true method, at least over here in my shop, for getting a really nice finish on brass. And that surface finish is like a mirror. So if you're ever having trouble getting a nice finish on brass, remember that little trick. It'll work for you every time. That's all we need. And there is side 2. You get my tool out of here. And that took about 5 minutes. Well, if I could find the chuck key, I would take this thing out. Pretty nice result, wouldn't you say? I want to do something a little special, dress this thing up a little bit. Yeah, I could go ahead and, thread a piece of brass and screw it in there and cut a 60 degree on it, but we've got aluminum on this side making the transition from the brass to the aluminum, and I kind of like that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an aluminum plug to go ahead and screw into this hole here, and then mount a piece of brass on top of the aluminum, and then cut the 60 degree point on it for the top to spin on. So yeah, it's a lot of extra work, but it's for a good cause, and it's for a great little kid. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to figure it out.